Welcome to We're at the Age from Voice St. Louis.
Melody, we did it. It is the last episode of the season for We're at the Age.
So exciting.
I can't believe we've made it this far.
I know. I feel like our inaugural season was really good.
I thought so. I feel like I learned a lot, even though I've been doing a lot of this stuff for a while now.
Yeah.
I feel like we got a lot of really good information from some really good experts. So do you think we should take some time to break it down a little bit?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Okay. So the very first thing that we did was you had a death party.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I learned a ton from that. So quick recap on what you did if people are just joining us.
Yeah, so I got my family together and made them talk about death. Everybody made PowerPoints and we had a little party with snacks, death-themed snacks, as one does. And yeah, we talked about sort of our end-of-life wishes and things that we want done if we're incapacitated or at the end. So
yeah. And I felt like that was a really good jumping off point because I think it gave us and a lot of our listeners a lot of really good ideas for the rest of the season, because that tied into so many of the different things that we talked about. Because ultimately, I think what I thought when I thought about a death party, the main thing I'm thinking about is making sure that everybody around me knows how I want to live just as much as how I want to die.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think as we talked to other experts through the year, that really resonated. Like even when we talked to the folks from Home Health with Vicki, when we talked with Melanie from Aging Gracefully about geriatric care management, and especially when we talked to Brian about wills and trusts and things like that. So much of what we talk about is about how we want those last moments, those last days. But by tying those bows up now, it really helps make things better in the end too.
Yeah, and that's kind of the key is to go ahead and think about these things now for yourself, for your parents, for your loved ones, so that you're not thinking about it when you're at a crisis point.
Exactly. And, I know my family and many families have been in a lot of crises over their lives. And so I know that there have been times where the whole family didn't know what needed to be done, what that person wanted to have done. And that's when you have to have troubles. And so that's where I thought like a death party was so genius, is because you did bring together the most important people in your life, the people that are going to have the fight if something goes wonky. And they all know now, which is genius.
Yeah, it makes me feel so much better that, God forbid, something were to happen to me. They will know and they will have peace and they won't be stressed out about what I would have wanted. So even though I'm young, I feel so much better having had that conversation. And I hope that other people have been encouraged to do that too. Actually, one of our coworkers said that she had a friend that listened to it and then showed pictures of her like doing all her paperwork and going through everything for her family. So like that made me feel so good that I was able to encourage somebody to do that for their family and for themselves.
Yeah. And I think so if anybody's listening and they're like, man, I really want to do that, don't forget that first episode. Really, Melody breaks it down a lot so that we can, all kind of just go ahead and do this ourselves. And I will admit, I have not yet done this, but it is on the list of things to do.
Okay. Well, I have to admit, there are still some things from the death party that I knew I needed to get done, some paperwork I needed to fill out, and I haven't done it yet. So
we're all there.
Yes, it is still something that I have to kind of push myself to do. But by season 2, I'm going to have it done.
Okay. I love it. I'm going to hold you to it. So then our next one was talking to our own coworker, Chin, about the Ombudsman program, Mom Needs an Advocate. And he really told us a lot about the Ombudsman program. And you're new to Voice.
Yep.
And so what did you learn in that episode?
Oh, my gosh. I did not know what an ombudsman was as in regards to the state when I came in. I was married to someone in the Navy, and so they had ombudsman for the ship. Oh, yeah? That was the person who communicated between the ship and the families. And so I knew the word, but I think learning more about what that role is and how an advocate is necessary, because I think, and I was talking to our policy and advocacy person, Nicole, yesterday about how a lot of people might assume, and we ran into this when we did our advocacy day at the state capitol. People might assume that nursing homes are going to have the residents' best interest in mind. We actually had a representative say that to us. They were like, well, what's good for the nursing homes is good for the residents. And we were kind of like, actually, no. And so I think, coming in from an outside perspective to, not attribute to malice what might just be ignorance. And that's that you assume that a nursing home is going to take care of their residents and do what's best for them. And unfortunately, I've learned that is not necessarily the case.
Yes. Most nursing homes are for-profit organizations.
Yeah.
Their first loyalty is to their shareholders in a lot of cases. There are some really good for-profit nursing homes out there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really good nonprofit nursing homes out there. So every group can have good and bad, but I think we see in this program that the nonprofit ones usually a little better than the for-profit ones, but when it comes down to it, a lot of the laws that get passed are in order to increase the profits and not necessarily to increase care. So that's something that the ombudsmen are out there fighting for each and every day. The thing that continues to shock me is that it is a free program that's paid for by the federal and state governments. And I will say right now that funding is a little bit shaky because of all of the different changes that are going on at the federal level. And so if people value this program, it really is important for folks to reach out to their representatives and let them know, because I can't imagine trying to live in a nursing home in the current state without that program, because it really does a lot of good. And quite honestly, I've seen it save a lot of lives.
Yeah, absolutely. The work that our ombudsmen, our social workers do is incredible, and they change lives every single day. So this is a program that I certainly hope will continue to get funding. It's very necessary.
So necessary.
Are you or a loved one exploring long-term care options? Finding the right support can be overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. One call to Voice Connect Helpline and you'll be connected with an expert who can help guide you through the process. Whether you're wondering about care levels, financing options like Medicare, Medicaid, veterans benefits, or paying out of pocket, or you need specific recommendations that match your needs, Voice Connect is here for you. We're more than just information. We're your partner in finding the right care. You're just one call away from peace of mind. Call 314-919-2403. That's 314-919-2403.
The next show that we did was about how to have hard conversations, talking about geriatric care management with Melanie Maynor from Aging Gracefully. And this is this is one of those programs that I don't think you realize exists in the world until you need somebody.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a really nice for-profit, although there are some non-for-profit organizations that do this as well, but it's a really nice complement to the Ombudsman program to me, because it's for those people that need that extra step, that helping hand. And so that's what I really like about this concept, is you've got somebody who's there to take the burden off of the family caregiver and slip in there occasionally, because I don't know about you, but do your parents listen to you when you tell them what to do?
Sometimes.
I don't.
Yeah. Usually with a lot of encouragement. But yeah. And I enjoyed learning about the geriatric care manager as well, because it's not something, coming in from outside of this industry, not something I even knew existed. And actually, not too long ago, we had an extended family member who had a fall in their home and was living on their own. And I was like, oh, they need a geriatric care manager. I was like, I know some resources that could help, because, going from living in your home independently to potentially needing some assistance, needing some more help, has got to be a scary thing to face. Yeah. And it certainly is a difficult thing for the kids and the family members to talk to that person about. So, I'm really glad that we were able to dive into that and how to start those conversations, and that there are resources available to do that.
Yeah. I look back on some of my family members, and, when we were talking with Melanie, I thought, man, it would have been great to have that in this situation and that situation. I had a great aunt who had lived in a house the same house almost all her life and took
Mhm.
immaculate care of it.
Mhm.
And, she would do things like so much so as like she would not have air conditioning units put in the windows because it might scratch the wood and
Mm.
things like that. So even the concept of like, are we going to put grab bars in? We knew that was not a conversation that we were going to be able to have with her.
Yeah.
And so I think the idea of having a care manager come in, even to have some of those tough conversations of like, let's put grab bars in,
Mhm.
and potentially, damage the value of the home or things
Yeah.
like that, a lot of, well, people in general, I mean, you look at the price of housing, I
Right.
mean, people value their homes. It's one of their biggest assets. And so
Mhm.
the idea of making modifications to it that could be expensive seems really scary. So
Yeah.
I really loved that idea with the care manager.
Yeah, definitely.
And then also somebody just to organize all those doctor's appointments because, oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a full-time job.
Mhm. Now, we have so since the season started, there's been a lot of news too about older adults who are celebrities and things like that. And one that, and this kind of ties with the care management, it ties with our next one, which was Making a Will with Brian. But while we were recording these episodes and as they were airing, the world found out that Gene Hackman died, and he was like, gosh, legend of film.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so many things that he was a part of, and just one of those names that like everybody knew. And apparently, he passed away kind of at first under really mysterious circumstances. People found him, his wife, and a dog all deceased all at once.
Yeah.
And what happened? And it came out later that his wife passed away from a rodent-borne illness, and then a couple days later, it looks like he passed away, and it looks like perhaps the dog died at some point in there just from starvation, which is just, the whole situation is just tragic.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like, of course, we'll never know,
Yeah.
but it sounds like in a lot of ways, they felt like the best way to take care of Gene in his, declining state. He had Alzheimer's.
Yep.
It felt like to hide him away and for his wife to become that only caregiver.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like it was weeks before somebody found them, but
Yeah.
which is just, I think it's a lot of people's nightmares.
Right.
Um,
It's horrific. Nobody
Yeah.
wants to think about something like that happening to anyone, especially in their family. And I think from the outside, it does look like Betsy was his full-time caregiver, and that unfortunately they didn't have anyone checking on them, and I don't know what the family situation was, but it certainly made me think about some of these episodes that we've done and how there are resources out there to support the caregiver because, Betsy obviously needed help. She needed support. She needed, at the very least, somebody to be checking on them, somebody to encourage her to go to the doctor or seek help so yeah, it's absolutely a tragic situation. And it's been on my mind since the news broke, just thinking about how some of these resources that we know of might have helped them and might have prevented this horrible tragedy.
I think the one that gets back to me, and I think this was one that we talked with Vicki Davis when we talked about home health care about was, every caregiver needs a backup.
Yeah.
And needs somebody caring for that caregiver.
Yeah.
Because it is, it's hard work. And
Absolutely.
we're conditioned to think that we're supposed to do it all ourselves because accepting help is charity or whatever things that we have in our mind, or that it's going to be too expensive or things like that. So I think a lot of times we just really need to sometimes put aside that pride for taking help, accept that, in many cases we can reach out to family members, other family members, we can reach out to friends. And even if it isn't just taking that, taking more, having somebody else to come in and care for my loved one, I can have those people care for me too. So I think that was one thing where I thought, man, I really wonder what Betsy was going through and what her mindset was in order for them to be closed away for so long. Because, folks are doing their best in those situations.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure she was. I'm sure she was tired. I'm sure she thought that they were making the best choice and the best decision to take care of everybody's needs. But unfortunately, it looks like that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
And it's just so sad.
Yeah. So I think, that also kind of brings us to we're getting around to making a will episode with Brian, Brian Quinn from Quinn Estate and Elder Law. And what did you do? You had done the death party, so you kind of knew what you might need to do, but what did you think about that episode?
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, the will is sort of the first step. You think like, okay, I need to have a will in place, or I should have a will, write down what I want. But it was interesting. He sort of diverted us from that, and he was like, really what you want is a trust. And that's going to be more protective of what you have and better for your family, because you're not going to have to go through probate. They're not going to have to wait a bunch of time to sort out what your will says. And so I thought it was interesting to sort of a reframing of thinking, okay, my first step is creating a will, which for many people it still might be, but to just reframe that into actually maybe a trust would be a better way to go.
Yeah. Or really working on a whole estate plan. And I think, as a middle class person that owns a house that the bank mostly owns, I kind of go, I don't have an estate.
Right.
But, kind of reframing that word to going all your stuff and all of the things that are connected to people that love you, and making sure that there are things that, if you have things of value, it's placed somewhere where it's going to be safe, and that, you have control over where things go. Because I think something that Brian told us was, there's a plan out there, but it's going to be the government's plan. Right. And none of us like what the government does.
Yeah. Or it might end up, didn't he tell us that someone's estate ended up with like a distant family member who didn't even know them, and then it was a whole fight to try and get it to the people that should have had. Oh my gosh, what a nightmare.
Yeah, it sounded odd. I think it was like a stepbrother's kids or something like that.
Yeah.
So it was definitely not the person that the person who passed away would have wanted. And so, it really is going, okay, what do I want? Actually, I was at a conference recently, and I met somebody from Arizona. Something really cool that I found out they have in Arizona is a power of attorney and basically end of life wishes depository that's statewide. And so if you do these things, it goes into that, and then from there, then if hospitals can tap into it, and people can understand what your life's wishes are. Which is genius. And I think maybe we should have one of those nationally. At least every state should have one.
Yeah.
But the thing that she had a button that said, choose your person. And so it wasn't even about doing the whole thing, but about picking the one person that, you want in charge of all of those things.
Yeah.
We were talking yesterday in our staff meeting that Missouri doesn't have a next of kin law. So, it won't be your parents making those decisions.
Yeah.
If you're married, it might be your spouse, but it won't be your parents automatically. And, so who could it be? Could it be a sibling? We don't know. Could it end up being the government in a lot of ways? And that's a good possibility. So
that is so scary.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrifying. Because I don't think anybody wants the government or someone that you don't know at all coming in and making decisions for you if something were to happen to you. So choose. I think that's really great framing, is choosing your person. And that's, again, something we kind of did at the death party. All of us said, if I'm unconscious in the hospital, this is the person who's going to be making decision. Again, we're planning to update it in 10 years. So in 10 years, my kids will be older, and it might shift from being my parents to being them. But if I don't have that written down somewhere, then that may still not happen. Yeah. So that's another important part that I need to still take care of.
And then they're going to have to do a whole death party situation of their own.
Yes, exactly. That's the goal.
I think they're going to love that. We're looking for nursing home residents and family members with stories to share. We need your help to participate in the Missouri state legislative process by voicing your concerns or support on various bills. No experience is necessary because we're going to support you every step of the way with resources and information. To find out more about the Missouri Alliance for Long-Term Care Reform, visit voicestl.org/alliance. So then we got into, after that, we started talking about home health care, and we had Vicki Davis come in. Vicki was, I love Vicki for so many reasons. So she was also the co-chairperson of our fashion show that we just put on, which was fabulous. And she looked fabulous at the event. But she came in to talk about home health care, home health care and home care, which are two different things.
Yes. Yes. There's an umbrella for these terms, as she told us. So.
Yeah. And I think that was the thing that I struggle with as somebody who refers people to different services is going, okay, so home health care is your physical therapist that comes to the home, your occupational therapist that comes to the house, the like full on nurse that comes to the house to maybe change some dressings or things like that.
Yeah.
It is not the person that comes into the house and make sure that you are eating today and that helps you shower and things like that, so that's more of a home care. So kind of understanding the two differences of that, I feel like I'm constantly trying to go, okay, which company does which. It was always a challenge for me.
Yes, but I think keeping in mind that there's a huge spectrum of what you can get from these kinds of services. So it's not just if you need somebody to change those dressings and to do those sort of big nursing type things, but it's also somebody who can just, like you said, make sure they're taking their meals and remind them to take their medication and check in on them, like maybe Gene Hackman's family should have had.
Yeah,
So,
very possible. When that, the nice thing about especially that home care is it gives the caregiver a little bit of respite too, which is a good thing. And I think throughout all of these conversations too, we talked a little bit about cost of a lot of that, and I know that can sometimes feel prohibitive to families.
Yeah.
And knowing that, if you are a kind of middle wage person, it becomes really challenging to pay for this because there aren't a lot of supports. One of the things that, I don't know if we mentioned throughout the season, but the area agency on aging in your community can actually often help you get connected with some of these services, and help you figure out which ones are right for you. And also in a lot of cases, help you figure out how you're going to pay for them, because in some states, some counties, sometimes have different programs that a lot of people can qualify that folks aren't necessarily aware of.
Yeah, definitely. It's always worth asking because they have a lot of resources that you might be able to use.
So I thought this next episode was going to be a real downer, because it was we're at the age to make peace with death. I've had the opportunity to know Dr. Maria Cockrell for 5 years now. She's been a part of Voice in a lot of different ways, but talking to her about the work of death doulas and what they do and how they help people make that transition. It's not necessarily always holding that person's hand as they go, but it's helping them prepare and helping them get ready. My favorite story she told was about helping to make the recipe book. That one just sticks with me, as somebody who is a cook. Maybe, I don't know. I made sloppy joes this week, but being able to look through those recipe books, and I know that's just a huge gift to the family and a part of a lot of people's legacy. And so that's what I really loved about this episode.
Yeah, I loved that too. I love talking to Maria. I agree that her helping to create the legacy is something that I wasn't expecting for a death doula to be a part of, but I absolutely love it. I think it's incredible. Another thing she talked about was encouraging people to just write down their daily experiences, just like journal. And it doesn't have to be an everyday thing, but like just writing down your experiences, because that can become a legacy as well. And so I think she had some really great ideas for us. And yeah, it was a really, really interesting episode.
That ties to what popped into my head just now. Was we were talking to one of our coworkers yesterday who has been doing a question a day journal for the last almost 10 years.
Yeah.
And I've been working with her for 5 years now. And no idea, but just kind of one of those secret things that she does by herself, and it's kind of her thing. But it's just so cool to think about the legacy that you can potentially leave in the things that you just do in your daily life. I don't think she's probably doing it to leave a legacy, but it is just really cool that, like, knowing that down the road, those thoughts are somewhere, that they're down on paper somewhere.
Yeah.
And heck, even for her to flip through is just a really cool thing. So thinking about all the ways that we can make sure that people will remember us, that
Mhm.
we're there, we're leaving our mark.
Yeah, absolutely.
So speaking of stuff that, mom's certainly going to throw away, she's definitely not throwing that away, but is we started talking about mom and dad moving and
Mhm.
selling our childhood home. I will report back that my parents are still no further along in the selling my childhood home, much to my brother's dismay.
Oh, man.
So, but having Ryan and Chad Clayman on was so good, to get to know them and understand what some of our options are, because
Yeah.
again, my brother and I have been stressing for years because the house needs work. There's,
Yeah.
some projects that didn't quite get finished. It's
Yeah.
fine. It's completely livable,
Mhm.
but it is by no means perfect. And so knowing that, if we do get to a point where no decisions get made and all of a sudden a decision has to be made for us, that we
Mhm.
have some options there as well, as going as is versus we're going to completely do a remodel that somebody's going to come and buy and then remodel themselves,
Yeah.
which is quite honestly maybe my personal worst nightmare. Is like we spend a bunch of money fixing everything for somebody to come and go, well, I hate it all anyways.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think knowing what the options are out there, and that if somebody just can't get their house to the point that it's ready for a traditional real estate situation, that there are options, and that Clayman Brothers can give a fair offer and help with the packing and the moving and going through everything. I mean, that's incredible. So, yeah, just knowing that that kind of option is out there
Mhm.
is great.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge takeaway for me for the full season is options. That
Mhm.
we all need to have some good options for what works with us. And I think I've been in the aging industry for most of my career, and that's been the thing I've seen over and over and over is that you can they call older adults people basically from like 55 till, I think I saw that the oldest Missourian died recently and she was 112. So, 55 to 112
Yeah.
is bigger than 55 to 0, as it turns
Right.
out. So,
Yeah.
a lot of people, a lot of different experiences, a lot of different socioeconomic statuses, a lot of different cultures, races, religions, um, just personal attitudes. And so having choices and being aware of what those choices are, I think that was maybe one of my biggest takeaways from this season was, we need to be able to plan a life that where we're able to access the full range of options,
Mhm.
and that those options aren't taken away from us because we don't know about them.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And my takeaway is pretty similar, just the amount of resources that are out there. Um, we may feel like as our parents are entering old age and starting to have some issues that we need to deal with, that it's something we're doing alone. Because we've never dealt with it before,
Mhm.
right? And the fact that there are people out there who can help, there are people out there who have answers and have experience. I can see myself going to my friends first and being like, hey, did you deal with this or whatever? But if you have to go beyond that, which I think most of us will, we're going to deal with things that we're not expecting as our parents age or as we age. And so just knowing that there are resources out there, there are people who do these kinds of things for a living and have expertise on helping with having these hard conversations and helping with supporting the caregiver, so that you're not bearing it all on your own. I feel much better knowing that there are these kinds of resources out there.
Mhm. The thing I really liked too, and all the people that we talked to, none of them were like hard sell people.
Yeah.
They were, you can come and have a consultation for me. It may be free. It may be up to $100. I mean, but it sounded like in almost every case of everybody that we talked to, they're like, we want to make sure that whatever we're doing is right for you first.
Right.
And it seems like, we talk about being in the sandwich generation, and it seems like so many services that are for kids are like, you got to buy this. This is what you got to have, and it's going to be wow. And it seems like maybe on the aging side, it is a little bit more of a give and take. What do you really need? Let's take a look at things.
Yeah.
It's interesting that we think almost everyone has a picture of how you're supposed to parent,
Mm-hmm.
but we have a lot more options and a lot more thoughts about how it is to age.
Yeah, there's really no, I mean, they say there's no handbook for being a parent. There's also no handbook for aging, whether it's yourself or you're watching your parents age. Yeah, there's no guidebook for how to go about that, and each person and each family is going to have such a different experience. Like I said, you don't really know what exactly you're going to be dealing with, and so you just kind of have to take it as it comes. But I feel better knowing that there are all of these people out there who are willing to help and willing to work with us and figure out the best way forward.
Yeah, maybe it's a treasure map that we're providing a treasure map here at We're at the Age.
Yeah, I love that.
An audio treasure map. Enjoy it. But we do want to know what everybody out there has to think about this season. We have a survey out, which
we
is
do
on
have
our
a survey.
page.
Yes, it's on our webpage, so voicestl.org/podcast, and I think it's right at the top. So if you just want to fill that out, let us know what you thought about the season, if you loved it, if you hate it, whatever. We would really love your feedback as we start building out season 2. And yeah, we will be back soon.
Yeah, and please send us your questions, ideas for season 2. That's going to be the best part is, the longer we do this, the more we're going to hear from you guys. And I really want to know what are you guys struggling with being in that sandwich generation? And, those people that are that like at 35 to 60, it's a big range of us.
Yeah.
But, we're all the ones dealing with, kind of those younger folks and those older folks, and trying to be the one in the middle that's working and managing it all at the same time. It can be a real challenge. And so we want to hear from you. We want to know what you're thinking. What resources are you looking for? What crises are you dealing with that we can help with? Please let us know. Fill out the survey, and we're going to see you guys all in season 2.
All right. See you then. Bye.